Salute, I'm in the building, guys. What's up, y'all? You know what I'm saying? We're a little behind, but we most definitely here. What's up, man? Shout out to everybody in the building, man. How y'all doing today? I hope everybody good, man. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to y'all. Hold on a second. Yeah, man. It's been a lot going on, y'all. It's been a lot going on. Lord have mercy, man. You know, it's been a lot going on, man. Shout out to that 5-piece for Rika. We most definitely in the building, gang. I'm running a little behind, but I'm most definitely here, man. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to y'all. Thank you for the for the gift. You know what I'm saying? We most definitely got a goal, and we most definitely got a poll, man. Y'all know it's been a lot going on in Minnesota, guys. In Minneapolis. So much so that somebody else basically has been unalived. Yeah, man. Somebody else, Mr. Alex Pretty, was most definitely unalive in Minnesota the other day. Now, it's been a lot of contradicting stories going around about what happened to Alex, guys. You know, they said that Trump and them classified him as a terror with the is at the end, right? I mean, I don't know how, man. They saying that is not true, man. Shout out to everybody in the building, man. It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy. And make sure you double tapping that screen. That's how you hit the like button, you know, or most definitely click those 3 dots in the right-hand corner. Hit that thumbs up, guys. Thank you, Miss Hoover. You know what I'm saying? That's 2 of the 5 that we need in order to accomplish the goal, man. It don't matter. It could be 99 cents, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever you feel that you have to give to support the channel, guys. But yeah, we about to get right down off into it, man. We gonna start here when they came out and announced that Mr. Alex Pretty was unalive, you know, and see what Trump's side had to say. You know, thank you, Son Kiss, for that 5-piece. See what Trump's side, you know, Miss Christine Nome, the one that they are trying to get, they trying to get her impeached. They trying to get her up out of there. You know, basically saying that she is allowing a lot of this to go on pertaining to ICE, guys, and the things that they are doing, you know, in Minnesota as well as other places. Shout out to Miss Pooh for that gift as well. All right, so let's get to her press conference that she held, you know, where she basically came out and announced that he was basically popped and unalive by ICE agents, guys. We're gonna start here.
Okay, can you tell me what to do? Yes. To discuss with you tonight, the first one being a storm that is barreling down on our country and will be impacting approximately 250 million Americans in 40 different states. We've been working together here at the FEMA headquarters and have opened our National Response Coordination Center and are working with local and state authorities.
This Christy Dome, guys, you know, basically on her. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to what she say. Make sure y'all listen close because they're saying that what Trump team put out basically about what happened to Mr. Alex Pretty is not what happened, guys. You know what I'm saying? Thank you for that too, Rika. Thank you. Let's go.
To make sure that we're getting individuals and communities pre-deployed resources that they may need and also preparing them for the upcoming days, which will significantly impact them and their citizens. The Trump administration and FEMA are working closely with them to get them information, to get them resources, and to help them be prepared and well-equipped for the road ahead as we go through this next week. But before I take any questions and give more details on the storm and its impact, I do want to address the tragic situation that we saw in Minneapolis today that unfolded on the streets. It occurred with DHS law enforcement as they carried out their lawful duties to keep Americans safe in the threat of criminal illegal aliens in this country. At 9:05 a.m., Central Time, the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officials and officers were conducting targeted operations in Minneapolis against an illegal alien whose criminal history included domestic assault with intentionally inflicting bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
Now listen close, guys.
The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement. About hundreds of protesters then showed up at the scene. They began to obstruct and to assault law enforcement officers. We saw objects being thrown at them, including ice and other objects, and a rampant assault began, and even an HSI officer agent's finger was bitten off. Crowd
Wow.
control measures were deployed to bring safety to the public and to law enforcement at the scene. And once again, I want to remind everybody that this situation and this tragedy did not have to happen. Our law enforcement are doing everything that they can to protect the public. We're praying for this deceased loved one's family and friends, but we also recognize that the Minnesota governor and the Minneapolis mayor need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. They need to evaluate their rhetoric, their conversations, and their encouragement of such violence against our citizens and our law enforcement officers. I'll remind you that Governor Walz today in his press conference said that our officers were not even law enforcement, which is a lie. He's called them the Gestapo. He's encouraged residents and citizens and violent rioters to resist. He's
Thank
doxed
you,
their
user.
identities, putting themselves and their families' lives in
Hey,
jeopardy.
Karen.
He's refused to turn over murderers to federal law enforcement officers. He's protected illegal criminals and protected them from being brought to justice, and even overseen a historic, unprecedented theft of American taxpayer dollars. Tens of billions of dollars were stolen under his watch, and he allowed it to happen, and in some instances may have even facilitated it. In other cities and states across the country, we don't see this happen. Local, state, and officials work with us to make sure that we're making their streets safer. I'll point to the city of Memphis, which is where there is a Democrat mayor in place. He worked with us and our federal law enforcement officers, and we saw murder rates drop by 50% because of that partnership. We've seen historic lows in the criminal acts that have happened in that city. We've had the same amount of law enforcement officers there, but a very different result because of the leadership in place. Last week, ICE did over 2,000 different operations, and we saw people be brought to justice and the American people made safer because of that work. We don't have this problem in Texas or in Florida because those individuals in those states work with us, and they make sure that they keep peace and calm while they bring criminals to justice. In Minneapolis, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey, they instead choose violence. They instead choose to encourage the destruction of their city and the crime against their people. It appears that they want this lawlessness to continue. It appears that they want chaos to distract from the theft and the fraud and the corruption of their city. I'll remind you that this city has been corrupt for years with what we've seen with people that have been stealing taxpayer money, all under the leadership of Governor Walz and Mayor Frey. I'm asking for all the authorities in Minneapolis and the leaders to work with us. And there are 2 things that we have repeatedly asked the governor and the mayor to do. Number one, all we want them to do is that when they are going to release a dangerous criminal from their jails, turn them over to us so we can get them out of this country as soon as possible. Since we have been back in the White House with President Trump's leadership, they have released over 490 criminals onto their streets rather than allow us to get them out of the country to keep families safe. The second thing that we have asked the governor and the mayor to do is to help us keep people safe. Just give us backup on the streets while we do our targeted
They
operations.
already told y'all they ain't helping y'all do nothing unless it's violent, basically violent crime, illegal immigrants. When it comes to regular, they're not doing that. They already told y'all that, Christy.
To get illegal criminals out of our country, and then we wouldn't have to be there facing these types of situations that we face with violent rioters who are impacting and attacking our law enforcement officers. That's all. Those are the 2, like we see in so many other cities and communities across the country. But they have refused because they want us talking about attacking law enforcement officers instead of the fraud and the theft that they facilitated in Minnesota. One thing I'd like to do before I take your question.
Enigma, don't come in here telling me what to do unless you talking to the video, because you will get deported.
on that situation on the storm is give you a few facts about the storm and what we're facing here in the coming days. This storm is going to produce
I
heavy
don't want to talk about no
snow,
storm.
storm that is coming. We have 17 different states and to save lives in partnership with a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according
There
to
we
those are
go.
released.
Thank
Hold
you.
on.
I'll take any questions that you
All
may
right,
have.
let's go.
Is DHS leading the investigation into this shooting? And if so, will there be a criminal investigation? And also, will we see body camera released from the officers involved?
We are conducting this investigation just like we do all other officer-involved shootings, and we'll continue to do that. So that is unfolding, and we'll give you more details as those are released.
Secretary Brown, thank you so much for doing this, and would welcome also any other guidance from Chief Scott. Did the 37-year-old who had a license to carry, did he brandish a gun? And at what point did law enforcement retrieve the gun and also the magazines from him? Can you offer clarity on
This
Make sure y'all
individual
listening.
showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training, and took action to defend the officer's life and those of the public around him. And I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and are using them to assault law enforcement officers.
Because video appears to show he's disarmed before shots are fired. So I just want clarity on that. And beyond that, I just want to follow up and ask who within the federal government is leading the criminal investigation, understanding that CBP OPR has opened up an internal investigation. And beyond that, why did federal agents tell Minneapolis Police Department to leave the scene?
We're continuing to follow the exact same protocols that we always have.
Well
And so this
informed, say
investigation
bald
is
face lie.
ongoing. We're
Let's go.
continuing to gather the facts as they unfold throughout that. And we'll do it just like we did under the entire Trump administration and previous administrations. Nothing has changed, and we'll continue to release details as we have them. But I want you to not distract away from the facts of this situation. Our law enforcement officers were there doing a targeted operation against an individual who was in this country illegally and had a criminal conviction for domestic assault with intent to do bodily harm and other convictions as well. This individual went and impeded their law enforcement operations, attacked those officers, had a weapon on him and multiple dozens of rounds of ammunition, wishing to inflict harm on these officers, coming brandishing like that and impeding their work that they were doing. We'll continue to allow. That is a different incident that happened at the same situation after the tragedy unfolded. But yes, that's the kind of assaults and violence that our law enforcement officers are facing out in the streets and that the local leaders are encouraging. Remember what Mayor Fry has said. That he wanted ICE out of the city. We have been working and had a presence in that city for years. We are there to enforce the law and to make sure that the public is safe. Just since we have been there, we have arrested thousands of individuals that have criminal convictions and are in this country illegally and gotten them off the streets of Minneapolis. The two things that we've asked the mayor and the governor for is that they would partner with us, and before they let somebody dangerous out of their jails, that they would let us know so we can deport them out of our country. I do not know why they continue to choose the side of lawbreakers, criminals, murderers, and rapists over the citizens of Minneapolis. And this situation that we have today is a tragedy that we don't have to have. We have it because we have a mayor and a governor who encourage this violence and encourage this type of rioting. And remember, these are the individuals that were in charge when Minneapolis burned in 2020. They facilitated it, they encouraged it, and they saw the destruction, and we all watched the destruction of that city back then. It doesn't have to happen again. It appears that they're following the same playbook, and the reason that they're doing it is to distract from the corruption that they have facilitated in fraud and theft from the American taxpayers. Tens of billions of dollars they have been funneled into criminal pockets and stolen from vulnerable people that needed these programs to take care of their children, to go out and provide services to individuals that were developmentally disabled, people that needed programs that the federal government has to take care of those that are less fortunate and need it. And instead, Governor Walz and Mayor Fry allowed that kind of theft to continue, and now they want to perpetuate violence against our law enforcement officers to cover it up.
Secretary,
Yes.
you just made claims that the individual posed a threat to law enforcement. I guess
That is no claim. It is
What-
the facts. The
what
facts of this
evidence-
situation,
Y'all
this
hear me?
individual showed up to a law enforcement operation with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition. He wasn't there to peacefully protest. He was there to perpetuate violence. And he was asked to show up and to continue to resist by a governor who's irresponsible and has a long history of corruption and lying. And we won't stand for it anymore. These law enforcement officers take an oath. They get up every single day and they go out to protect the public. Many of these individuals live in their communities. And this mayor and this governor have doxed them. They have allowed people to threaten them and their families and expose their identities in order to instill fear and violence. And that's not what America is about. We're going to continue to tell the truth about Minnesota, Minneapolis, what happened here, the theft over the last many years that these leaders have facilitated. And we're going to continue to do our work to get to the bottom of the investigations. And the one question you should be asking.
Shout out to So Blessed for being a member for the last 18 months. She said, salute my boy. Support the channel and hit that like button. Yeah, double tap the screen if you're on the mobile device. So click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. It helps out the channel, guys. Make sure you like the video. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. But this is Christy Nome on what happened to Alex Pretty in Minnesota, guys. Do y'all think it was justified or unjustified? Make sure you vote on the poll that's in the chat.
Is the mayor, the governor, and the attorney general have all confirmed that they have been subpoenaed to come in front of a criminal federal grand jury. So they are covering up and are being in a part of a system where they're going to be brought to justice for anything that they had to do with this investigation. They have confirmed they've been subpoenaed, and they will be in front of a grand jury to get that criminal investigation unfolding and to disclose the kind of fraud that they have allowed to happen.
And do you have any plans to leave Minneapolis?
The White House has labeled the man who was killed in Minnesota as a domestic terrorist. Is that something you agree with? And have you seen any evidence to back up that claim?
When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism.
Whoa.
This individual
I told
who
y'all
came
they labeled him
with
a terror
weapons
with the
and
S at the
ammunition
end.
to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
Where's the evidence of his ideology,
Yes.
though?
Drew Evans, the superintendent of Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, had said during a news conference today that when federal agents blocked his agency from the shooting scene, when they went, got a judicial warrant, they returned, they were still blocked. Why were they
We have
blocked?
asked these state officials to help partner with us on law enforcement operations for months. Ever since President Trump came into the White House, we've asked them for their partnership to stand alongside of us so we could do targeted operations against criminal illegal aliens and to help us make their streets safer. They have refused over and over and over again, and they have perpetuated a narrative that is absolutely false. And our federal law enforcement officers will continue to do their work, and they'll do that to make America safe again.
Secretary, no.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, this is the second DHS law enforcement operation shooting that's happened this year. There was another incident in Portland. 5 people have also died in immigration detention so far this year. Why is immigration enforcement becoming so deadly under your tenure?
Immigration enforcement is exactly what the American people asked for. When we had a Democrat administration in the White House that facilitated an invasion of millions of people over our southern border and let people come into this country that were completely unvetted. We know for a fact that we had hundreds, if not thousands, of terrorists, suspected terrorists, criminal organizations and gangs that came in and have been committing criminal activities against American citizens for years now, that the American people said enough is enough. We want them out of our country. We want them brought to justice. And they trusted President Trump to go out there and to make America safe again. It is absolutely false to say that there's more incidents with our law enforcement than there was in history before. In fact, our accuracy and our operations are being conducted in a manner that is historic for accuracy and taking care of people and doing so safely. So the narrative with the press that they've perpetuated that we have more individuals that have been jeopardized or that our detention centers aren't at the highest standards is absolutely false. Our detention standards and the people that are being taken care of there are at the highest level they've ever been. They exceed state and local standards, and we'll continue to do that and make sure that people have the facts around how people are treated when they're brought into detention, and then we take them home.
We've seen some reports about witnesses being taken to the Whipple Federal Building in Minneapolis. Could you explain why the witnesses of the shooting this morning have been taken to that building?
The witnesses to, are you talking about the ones that have been detained that are illegal aliens?
No, the witnesses, I think, to the event in Minneapolis.
I won't speak to the investigation and the
Hey
details.
guys, it's like 300 of us in here. Let's double tap that screen, guys. That's how you hit the like button on your mobile device, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. I appreciate everybody in the building, but most definitely let's take time to get those likes all the way up. We should be well past 100 by now. Double tap that screen, guys, if you're on a mobile device, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. No Fub, who you talking to? Are you talking to me, or are you talking about something she's saying in the video? Let me know so I know whether you get to stay or leave. Because if you talking to me, you're going to get deported.
And those will continue to unfold, but I do know that we're continuing to follow the same protocols that we always have.
Secretary, no.
Was there a question back here on the storm?
Does anyone have a question on the storm? We are at FEMA headquarters. Secretary, no.
Yes.
If these are targeted arrests, why are these immigration agents going after civilian protests out of their way? And second,
This individual impeded the law enforcement officers and attacked them. State the facts as they unfolded on the street today. We were doing a targeted operation against an illegal criminal, and this individual came with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition and attacked them. And these agents took action to defend their lives and to defend the lives of the people around them, and acted according to their training. And we will continue to let this process go forward and not allow people like Governor Walz and Mayor Frey to lie about what actually unfolded on that street. Now they have deemed this situation an unlawful assembly, and these leaders aren't even cleaning up the situation that they have as far as the violent riots that we see unfolding in Minneapolis right now. They need to be strong, take action, protect their citizens, and partner with us to go after these criminals that perpetuate violence and to keep our law enforcement officers safe. Let's all be grateful for people who take an oath every day and they go out to enforce the laws. That is their job, is to enforce the laws and to make sure that there is consequences for breaking the law in this country and that it applies equally to everybody. That is what they do. They do it every day. They do thousands of operations every single week, and they do it with excellence. Don't let political corrupt leaders who are just trying to cover up their theft of American taxpayer dollars try to distract you from the facts of the situation. One more question, right here.
Governor Tim Walz said he told Susie Wiles that Minnesota would take the lead on this investigation. Are you working with local law enforcement on the investigation?
This is the same protocol we'll always follow. Who would trust Governor Walz at this point? The man has stood up and encouraged resistance. He has refused to partner with us. He's sacrificed his citizens' safety and their well-being by choosing the side of people who break the law and who steal money and who perpetuate violence. He has chosen all of that and backed an administration previously that allowed an invasion of our country. We need to partner with people who truly understand that the law is the law, and in the United States, we will keep people safe. Thank you. Last question.
Does this move the president closer to invoking the Insurrection Act?
The president will use every tool that he needs to follow through on his promises to the American people. I'm proud to work for a president that wants to keep people safe, and he recognizes that political individuals like Governor Walz and Mayor Frey need to be met head on with recognizing that we're not going to allow them to distract us from what they facilitated for corruption in their state. We're going to treat Minneapolis exactly the way that we have treated every other city across this country as far as helping to make those streets safe. Remember, we have other cities with Democrat mayors, Republican mayors that we worked well with together. We've driven down the crime rates. We've driven down the murder rates. We have continued to keep people safe, and we have stopped hundreds of millions of lethal doses of drugs from killing our children, and have continued to do operations to make sure that we're protecting them, our kids and our grandkids, from the criminal networks that Joe Biden let in and leaders like Governor Walz allowed to be successful.
Let's go well informed with a fact. He says Alex intervened once they pepper sprayed and pushed the woman to the ground, which is contradictory to the story that they're telling. We're going to get to that in a second.
And to thrive on the streets of Minneapolis. It's going to stop. All of the control in this situation is in Governor Walz's hands. Partner with us on, before you release a murderer out into the streets, give them to us so we can get them out of our country. We are focused specifically on child pedophiles and sexual assault and trafficking rings in Minneapolis have brought dozens and dozens of them to justice, why is he protecting them and refusing to work with us? All he has to do is, before you let somebody out of your jail onto the streets, is give them to us so we can get them out of our country. The second thing is, just keep people safe. Work with us so that we can go get these criminals and get out of there and not have to worry about our law enforcement officers getting attacked by individuals with guns and ammunition and weapons and assaulting and doxing them and their families. We'll continue to do all that we can. We also want to continue to make sure that everybody recognizes this storm is significant. It's the largest storm that we've seen impact the most states. Every one of your emergency management directives.
All right, so that's what Christy Nome had to say about Alex Pretty, guys. Y'all heard him call him a terror with the is at the end, guys. All right, because like I said, there are a lot of stories, going around when it comes to this whole situation with the unaliving of this man, y'all. All right, so we got Trump reacting to what happened to Mr. Pretty. Check. Hold on, let's get here. We got some lawmakers talking about it. This is him right here. This is the man that was unalived in Minnesota, guys. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy, man. Prayers for his family. Like you heard Well Informed say, they basically saying that this guy intervened, when he seen ICE basically pepper spray a woman and push her to the ground. And for that action, he was unalived, and basically being called a terror with the is at the end, guys. Let's take time to double tap that screen, y'all. Get the likes up. They super low for the amount of people that's in the building. Double tap that screen. That's how you hit the like button if you're on a mobile device, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. I wouldn't keep on asking y'all to hit the like button. I ain't asked y'all for no money. I ain't asked y'all for anything except to hit the like button, guys. So if you're in the building, you're viewing this, you're in the chat or in the clouds, double tap that screen. That's how you hit the like button, or you can click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. Let's find out how Trump feels about this whole situation regarding this man right here, Mr. Alex Pretty.
Agents in Minneapolis.
What we're seeing on TV, it's causing deep concerns over federal tactics and accountability.
Senator Bill Cassidy calling the situation disturbing, writing the credibility of ICE and DHS are at stake. Senator Lisa Murkowski adding, ICE agents do not have carte blanche in carrying out their duties. Others taking issue with how quickly the Trump administration made an assessment, labeling Peretti a domestic terrorist without providing any evidence. John Mitnick, who served in President Trump's first term and helped establish the Department of Homeland Security, criticizing the agency, saying, I'm enraged and embarrassed by DHS's lawlessness, fascism, and cruelty. But top Trump officials continue to double down. FBI Director Kash Patel suggested it is illegal to bring a gun to a protest.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple.
Overnight,
y'all heard what he said? That's Kash Patel, head of the FBI.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple.
Overnight, President Trump telling the Wall Street Journal he doesn't like any shooting, adding, quote, but I don't like it when somebody goes into a protest and he's got a very powerful, fully loaded gun with 2 magazines loaded up with bullets also. That doesn't play good either. It's a stark contrast to what many Republicans, including the president, had to say about Kyle Rittenhouse, seen here carrying an assault-style rifle through Kenosha, Wisconsin in 2020, before opening fire, killing 2 men. He was acquitted on the charges. President Trump called him a very nice young man. Minnesota officials say Peretti was a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry, a right protected under the Second Amendment. Republican Congressman Thomas Massey posting, carrying a firearm is not a death sentence. It's a constitutionally protected, God-given right. The NRA even speaking out, posting, responsible public voices should be awaiting a full investigation, not making generalizations and demonizing law-abiding citizens. The president's predecessors calling for it all to stop. Former President Barack Obama said the shooting should be a wake-up call to every American. And former President Bill Clinton stating, at every turn, the people in charge have lied to us, told us not to believe what we've seen with our own eyes.
And over on Capitol Hill, Senate Democrats are now trying to take a stand, saying they will oppose a Department of Homeland Security funding bill that could lead to a partial government shutdown by the end of the week, which means TSA agents and FEMA response would be impacted. But regardless, it will do nothing to stop the $75 billion that Republicans have already passed and allocated toward funding ICE.
All right. So that was some of what some of your leaders had to say, including Trump, guys. All right, let's go here. Let's see what Mayor Fry had to say about this entire situation that took place in his city.
A video of more than 6 masked agents pummeling one of our constituents and shooting him to death. How many more residents, how many more Americans need to die or get badly hurt for this operation to end? How many more lives need to be lost before this administration realizes that a political and partisan narrative is not as important as American values? How many times must local and national leaders must plead with you, Donald Trump, to end this operation and recognize that this is not creating...
He wants ICE out of his city, man. He telling Trump he needs to end this operation, guys. You know, there's already been 2 unalivings that we know of. I think it's like they saying like it's a total of 5, guys. But this is Mayor Fry of Minnesota basically speaking about how he feels about ICE being in his city and the events that have occurred since they've been there.
Safety in our city. As you'll hear from Director Sayer in just a second, we have seen these kinds of operations in other places, in other countries, but not here in America. Not in a way where a great American city is being invaded by its own federal government. I'm done being told that our
Thank you,
members
Rika,
are
for
responsible
helping me
for
complete
the
that goal.
vitriol in our
Thank you.
cities.
I appreciate it
I'm done
already.
being told that our local elected officials are solely responsible for turning down the temperature. Just yesterday, we saw 15,000 people peacefully protesting in the streets, speaking out, standing up for their neighbors. Not a single broken window, not a single injury. Those peaceful protests embody the very principles that both Minneapolis and America was founded upon. Conversely, the mass militarized force and unidentified agents who are occupying our streets, that is what weakens our country. That is what erodes trust in both law enforcement and in democracy itself. So to everyone listening, stand with Minneapolis. Stand up for America. Recognize that your children will ask you what side you were on. Your grandchildren will ask you what you did to act to prevent this from happening again. To make sure that the foundational elements of our democracy were rock solid. What did you do to protect your city? What did you do to protect your nation? This is not what America is about. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue. This administration and everyone involved in this operation should be reflecting. They should be reflecting right now and asking themselves, what exactly are you accomplishing? If the goal was to achieve peace and safety, this is doing exactly the opposite. If the goal was to achieve calm and prosperity, this is doing exactly the opposite. Are you standing up for American families right now? Or are we tearing them apart? The invasion of these heavily armed masked agents roaming around on our streets of Minneapolis, emboldened with a sense of impunity, it has to end. This is not how it has to be. So, to President Trump, this is a moment to act like a leader. Put Minneapolis, put America first in this moment. Let's achieve peace. Let's end this operation, and I'm telling you, our city will come back. Safety will be restored. We're asking for you to take action now to remove these federal agents.
All right, so hold on.
The city of
So y'all heard him, basically asked them to act now. Telling Trump, act now and remove these agents from my city. It's evident that they don't want ICE in Minnesota, guys. All right, Which brings us to the White House, guys, and Caroline Levitt. She most definitely spoke on this whole situation, with Minnesota officials and the situation that happened with Mr. Pretty. Check this out.
Chaotic scenes in Minnesota over the weekend. Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This includes Renee Good, Alex Pretty, the brave men and women of federal law
That's how you
enforcement,
say his name. I
and
keep
the
saying
many
Pretty.
Americans who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien criminals. Saturday's shooting remains under active investigation by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. The Customs and Border Protection is also conducting their own internal review. As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Fry and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Fry have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike. This is precisely what unfolded in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. This used to be a universally accepted position in the United States. Amid the hysteria, we must remember how we got here to this moment today and what this Democrat opposition is about. Former President Joe Biden and the Democrats opened America's borders for 4 years, inviting tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world to flood into our country. Among them, violent criminals who terrorized American communities and have inflicted devastating, permanent pain and harm on law-abiding Americans and their families. Yet we never saw outrage from Democrats or their allies in the liberal media over these horrifying crimes against U.S. citizens. The pain of American angel families was ignored and dismissed because it undermined the Democrat narrative. Innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin are just a few of the many victims savagely murdered by...
Can we get 11 more on that like, guys? Double tap that screen. Let's get the likes over 100. Can we get 11 more likes? Double tap the screen if you're on a mobile device, or click those 3 dots in the right-hand corner and hit that thumbs up, guys, as we listen to Caroline Levitt basically break down, what the White House feels about what happened to Alex Pretty in Minnesota, guys.
Legal alien criminals. Earlier this month, an illegal alien from Mexico with a long criminal history who came into our country under Joe Biden's administration threw a baseball-sized stone at a school bus carrying children in New Jersey and fractured the skull of an 8-year-old innocent child. President Trump promised accountability to these American families by securing the border, deporting every illegal alien who has committed crimes, especially and most importantly, violent crimes. Nearly 80 million Americans voted for him to deliver on that very promise, and he is. As the duly elected president, the president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York, and yes, Minneapolis. Yet Democrat leaders in Minnesota with sanctuary city policies have actively defied federal immigration law and the will of the people. And as a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number one, Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number two, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here. We hope Governor Walz will do the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days, but polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort. With that, I will answer your questions. And Jordan Conradson, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Caroline. Jordan Conradson.
Hey, Gigi.
A few questions. First, with respect to the shooting in Minneapolis, we're seeing massive outrage from the mainstream media and the left, but I'm just wondering, where was that outrage when Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was executed by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, who she posed no threat to in the U.S. Capitol?
Well, you raised a very important point, which I also believed I just raised as well in those opening remarks, in that there has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media and picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday. Gabe. Sure, go ahead.
I want to get your response to this. The Arizona Attorney General, just days before this shooting in Minneapolis, she seemingly encouraged rioters to go out and shoot and kill ICE agents. And I'll quote her here. She said, "If you reasonably believe your life's in danger and you're in the house or in your car or on your property, you can defend yourself with lethal force." And she said that you can't tell if ICE agents are law enforcement or imposters, and it becomes an issue of whether you reasonably believe they were law enforcement. Do you have a response to that, and does the White House believe that she should be held accountable for these remarks?
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him, and he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country. Gabe, go ahead.
For justifying violence.
I would defer you to the Department of Justice on that.
Thank you, Caroline. Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage to massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders-Czar Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials, and I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
On Saturday's shooting, has the president been briefed and have you been briefed on specific details of the shooting? How many shots were fired? How many guns discharged? And I mean, did the protesters' gun go off or only the officers' guns? Do you have any of those details?
Again, the investigation is continuing, Jennifer, and we will let the facts lead and we will let the facts play out. In this investigation, I do know that HSI and FBI are conducting interviews with those that were involved and the agents who were involved in this unfortunate tragedy on Saturday.
Are the president up to date on all those details?
The president is obviously very much on the ball with respect to this investigation. I think he's made that quite clear with the various statements that you've seen him put out, and also the 4 points that the president has outlined as well to Governor Walz, and to encourage him to cooperate with ICE and with the administration. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts and the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Preddy for calling him, quotes, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially especially losing one's child. And that same empathy from the president goes for the parents of angel families, parents of victims of illegal alien crime across our country as well. And that's exactly why the president continues to be wholeheartedly committed to deporting the worst of the worst criminals from our country. Why don't we go to the back? Kelly.
Does the president believe that the killing, though, was a mistake? Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said, we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts of the investigation lead itself.
Does he want the body camera footage to be released to the public?
Now, that's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium. Sure.
Carrie, how serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state officials in Minnesota are actively coordinating with demonstrators through encrypted or non-encrypted communications, as well as providing government resources to impede immigration enforcement operations?
I'm sorry, Carrie, could you repeat your question?
How serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state Minnesota officials are communicating with demonstrators to basically impede immigration officials?
Well, we've definitely seen active organization amongst these left-wing groups, Carrie, and it is something that I know the FBI and the Department of Justice are looking into. Again, it is illegal to unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country, and these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their jobs and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst. I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents we saw this past weekend in Minneapolis. That would make it very difficult for you to show up and do your job here at the White House every single day. That's what these officers in Minneapolis are facing. That's why the president is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey for these three very simple and common sense points of cooperation so that ICE and local law enforcement can work together. Again, we are just asking for police to be police. And if you ask any law enforcement agent or official, they want to be able to work with their federal counterparts at the state and local level and vice versa.
Caroline. Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions. One is looking forward. The role of Mr. Homan. Is he being sent by the president to diffuse the situation that exists right now on the ground? Is he the point person essentially for the White House in terms of trying to tamp down the tensions that exist right now in Minnesota?
Well, Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline from 9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan. So he's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president. He will continue to have these meetings in the hopes that ICE and local law enforcement can cooperate and work together to have successful immigration enforcement, as we've seen in almost every other state across the country.
And secondly, Caroline, can you talk a little bit about tomorrow's trip by the president to Iowa, what the purpose of that trip is, and what the goals of that trip are?
Sure, yes. Tomorrow, President Trump will be traveling to Des Moines, Iowa. He will be making a local visit at a local business, and then he will be giving a speech on affordability and on the economy. And I know he very much looks forward to being there, to meeting with the great people of Iowa, but also lawmakers as well. Jake.
Caroline, a couple quick questions. First, does the president remain fully confident in Kristi Noem's ability to lead the DHS?
Yes.
And then just secondly, just on that Wall Street Journal reporting that we saw yesterday, the president said at some point that the immigration enforcement officers would leave Minneapolis. Did the Saturday killing of Alex Pretty expedite that withdrawal at all?
To your first question, the answer is yes. He still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem. To the second question, I would point you back to what I said earlier. If Governor Walz and Mayor Fry implement these common sense cooperative measures, CBP will no longer be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement will peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions, to remove violent criminals from American neighborhoods across the country.
Did Walz ask the president to remove the immigration enforcement officers?
He asked the president to scale down, and the president reiterated what the president put out in his statement yesterday and what I'm sharing with all of you as well. I would just add on this level of cooperation a few statistics that I think are very important. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. And we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C. We had a great level of cooperation with Mayor Bowser in the local government, and we have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live, so you can thank President Trump for that. The murder rate in Washington, D.C. has plummeted as a result. There were no riots, there were no protests, nobody was tragically killed as a result of that level of cooperation between federal and local authorities. And again, that's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally common sense. Jared, go ahead.
Thank you. Caroline, in this process, you continue to describe the situation in Minneapolis as chaos. Was there any mistake made by Secretary Noem that led the president to send Mr. Holman there?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Did Secretary Noem make a mistake which led to...
If she made any mistake that could lead the president to send Mr. Holman to Minneapolis?
No, as I already mentioned, Mr. Holman has been working alongside Secretary Noem and for the president over the course of the last year. And again, he's uniquely positioned to hop on a flight to Minnesota today to continue this correspondence with state and local authorities, and that's what he's going to be doing. Fran.
Caroline, is it the White House's position that Americans have the right to show up to these ICE operations and film, document, or protest the law enforcement actions?
All Americans have a First Amendment constitutional right, of course, but Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede and obstruct lawful immigration enforcement operations. That is actually a crime, and it's something that we've seen taking place in the streets of Minneapolis, which again is leading to these dangerous circumstances that these federal law enforcement officers have been forced to work within.
With respect to the call with Governor Walz this morning, the president described it as respectful. He said we seem to be on a similar wavelength, but you had strong criticism for the governor and the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, just now. So could you explain the difference in tone between what the president had said in his True Social post and I think some of the criticisms that you just levied from the podium?
Fran, I think the criticisms that I laid out, I'm painting the picture for all of you in this room, are what led to the moment that we are in today, where Governor Walz and President Trump are having a conversation, a constructive and productive conversation to end the chaos and the lawlessness that has taken place in Governor Walz's state. Elena.
Thank you. I had a question. With Holman now going to Minnesota, is Gregory Bovino also going to remain in Minnesota overseeing these ICE operations?
Mr. Bovino is a wonderful man, and he's a great professional. He is going to very much continue to lead Customs and Border Patrol throughout and across the country. Mr. Holman will be the main point of contact on the ground in Minneapolis.
And to follow up, given what we've heard from several Trump administration officials, people like Stephen Miller, as people point out, calling him a domestic terrorist, Bovino saying that Freddie was out to massacre law enforcement, why not require ICE agents to wear body cameras to clear up some of the disputes that we are hearing from witnesses and video footage versus what the administration has been saying?
Well, that's a policy question that I know the policy folks in the building are having with members on Capitol Hill, and I'll leave it to them and the president to make that decision.
And I just have a final question is on, you were talking about the level of cooperation that the president talked about with Governor Walz. Will the administration commit to cooperating with local officials on this investigation into Alex Freddie?
The president spoke about this with Governor Walz and said he would have a discussion about it. He did not make a commitment, and so therefore I won't make that commitment here. I would just remind all of you in the media, because I've seen a lack of reporting on this fact, there are investigations into what took place on Saturday. The Homeland Security investigations and the FBI have teamed up for an investigation, and there's also an internal CBP investigation, an internal review of what is happening on the ground in Minnesota. The president supports those investigations, and as I've said repeatedly, he wants to see them move forward. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline. FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe the Second Amendment rights remain in effect even when protesting?
The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens. Absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Is in Minneapolis. Will his mission continue to be focusing on illegal immigrants with a criminal history, or will it be on illegal immigration generally?
Mr. Homan will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out. In just the last few days, I'm happy to provide this packet to anyone in the room. ICE has arrested multiple violent criminals, illegal aliens within Minnesota. Many of them have convictions for assault, driving under the influence, fraud. This individual here I'm looking at was an aggravated felon with multiple convictions for larceny, fraud, and forgery of checks, vehicle theft, drug possession, domestic assault, inflicting bodily harm on another, criminal convictions of larceny, identity theft, again, charged with driving under the influence. These are extremely dangerous people who Governor Walz and Mayor Fry have allowed to roam on their streets, and all the president is asking for is cooperation to arrest individuals like this and deport them from the United States of America. I'll take a couple more. Go ahead.
So this weekend, the president posted that this is a cover-up of the fraud in the state of Minnesota. He also posted Minnesota is a cover-up. These both happened after the shooting. So given that these came after the shooting, what is the this here? What is the cover-up he's alleging?
Yes, it's a good question. I spoke with the president about this at length. What the president is referring to is the fact that you have Governor Walz and again the mayor who have been encouraging these left-wing agitators to come out and to harass and to dox and to threaten ICE and to make this conversation about and smear lies about federal law enforcement who again are just trying to do their jobs in an attempt to distract from the widespread massive fraud that has taken place in their state. Billions and billions of dollars has been stolen from law-abiding taxpayers in Minnesota, and the administration continues to be very focused on getting to the bottom of it, and especially, and the president raised a good question over the weekend with respect to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who now has a net worth within the millions, and one must ask themselves why and how is that possible? Is she connected to the fraud rings that we have seen taking place within her state and her own district? It's a question the American people are raising, and the president believes it's one worth answering.
Haley. Thanks, Caroline. I want to go back to some of the comments from Stephen Miller and Secretary.
This is wild, guys. Make sure you guys are double tapping that screen, man. Everything we know regarding Alex Petty, guys, in the way that he was unalived.
Statements made by other officials. Was this public perception of the credibility of those investigations now playing out?
Again, the president believes that these investigations are credible, they are continuing, they are active, and he wants to let them play out. Alex.
Caroline, thank you. Is the administration willing to separate DHS funding from other funding bills in order to avoid a broader shutdown?
Look, at this point, the White House supports the bipartisan work that was done to advance the bipartisan appropriations package, and we want to see that passed. Policy discussions on immigration in Minnesota are happening. Look, the president is leading those discussions as evidenced by his correspondence with Governor Walz this morning, but that should not be at the expense of government funding for the American people, which would include, as you know, Alex, FEMA funding, and we are in the midst of the storm that took place over the weekend, and many Americans are still being impacted by that. So we absolutely do not want to see that funding lapse, and we want the Senate to move forward with passing the bipartisan appropriations package that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis.
Secondly, mean, there's another round of Russia-Ukraine talks this weekend, Sunday. I wonder if you can walk us through what the president, how it will be involved in that, if at all. We'll be talking to President Putin, President Zelensky ahead of those meetings.
I'm not tracking any scheduled calls at this point in time. However, the president remains deeply involved, and of course he's being apprised by his advisors, namely Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Witkoff, on these talks. They had a multilateral meeting this past weekend, which didn't get a ton of coverage, but that was historic in nature, where the president's team has really brought two sides of this war to the table together to move the ball closer towards peace. So the president is not giving up on the peace process. He obviously just met with President Zelensky when we were in Davos, Switzerland, but I'm not tracking any calls scheduled for this week. On one more foreign policy point, I will point out, as you all saw, the last remaining body of the hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, has been returned. This is a huge foreign policy feat for the President of the United States, for the State of Israel, and frankly for the whole world. The President made the impossible possible, and so it's great news for the President, for the United States, for our allies, and also for peace in the Middle East. And I understand that more than 20 new additional countries have also signed up to join the newly established Board of Peace with respect to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is another historic accomplishment for this president. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you in Iowa tomorrow.
All right, so there was Caroline Leavitt basically on how the White House feels about, you know, the situation that happened with Alex Pretty, guys. Yeah, man, they called him a terror with the ist at the end, man. Make sure y'all double tapping that screen. That's how you hit the like button, or you can click the three dots, hit that thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel if you're new. Now, we heard Fry a while ago say that what he wanted from this was for ICE to remove for Trump to remove ICE from Minnesota, guys. Well, Trump gave him they most definitely are getting ready to exit up out of there. And he also is bringing in Tom Homan, guys, as he moves to take the active chief, which is this guy right here, out of Minnesota, and bring in Tom Homan. Check this out.
Before we take questions, and before I hear from my colleague, Mr. Marcos Charles, to talk about a subject that I think is very important given the events over the past couple of days. And that topic is the topic of choices. Choices. Now, choosing or making a choice is one of the only true freedoms that any of us really have, is to make a choice. Whether that's the choice to be here today as the media, the choice to go to school, join the military, join law enforcement. Making a choice is a freedom that resides within us. Now, good choices are important in life.
Can we get the likes up to 200, guys? Double tap that screen if you have not, man. Let's get the likes up. It helps the channel. Double tap that screen. You know, is one way to hit it if you're on a mobile device, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up, man. You know, let's most definitely like the video. This is the acting chief, you know, of ICE in Minnesota, basically giving his side of what happened to Mr. Alex, you know, in Minnesota, before he was removed from Minnesota.
As we all know, and many actions that take place are due to our choices. The choice to, say, cross the border illegally, that is a choice that someone makes. To cross the border illegally, that's a choice. The choice not to utilize the CBP Home app, that's a choice. Not standing in line and doing it the right way, that is a choice. And there are always actions that result from our choices. When you choose to use your 5-year-old child as a shield to evade law enforcement, that is a choice that someone makes. And there are actions and consequences that result from that choice. Or when you're a politician or a community leader, you make a lot of choices there. Some very important, wide-ranging, and in-depth choices. When, as a politician, if you choose collusion and corruption as a choice, then there are consequences and actions that take place because of that. That's one reason the U.S. Border Patrol and ICE are here in Minneapolis by the thousands, is because of those choices. When politicians, community leaders, and some journalists engage in that heated rhetoric we keep talking about, when they make the choice to vilify law enforcement, calling law enforcement names like Gestapo, or using the term kidnapping, that is a choice that is made. There are actions and consequences that come from those choices. And then when someone chooses to listen to a politician, a so-called journalist, a community leader that spouted that type of vilification towards law enforcement or anything else, when you choose to listen to that, that is a choice, and there are consequences and actions there also. I think we saw that yesterday.
He's talking about Alex, guys.
And those
He's
actions
talking
and
about
choices
these choices
can obviously have tragic consequences, bad outcomes that law enforcement never wants to see. Law enforcement never wants to see a bad consequence due to a poor choice. Now, these choices have reverberations throughout society. Let's take a look at, go ahead and put that on the screen, please. Yesterday, Border Patrol agents were engaged in a targeted law enforcement effort to apprehend this individual here, Mr. Jose Huerta Chuma. Look at his criminal record: domestic assault, intentional infliction of bodily harm, disorderly conduct. He's also got some other records there as well. This individual remains at large today. This individual is still roaming the streets today. This is the individual on that targeted law enforcement efforts that Border Patrol agents were engaged in yesterday, when they were disrupted, assaulted, and prevented from conducting that Title 8 mission by individuals intent on making the choice to riot, to create anarchy, and to be a violent mob. This individual walks the streets today because of those choices made by politicians and those perhaps weaker-minded constituents that chose to follow directions of those politicians. Sad state of affairs. Now, enforcing the law is not a choice. I choose to be a Border Patrol agent. Mr. Marcos Charles chooses to be an ICE agent, but enforcing the law, that's not a choice, that is a duty. As we all know, those laws were enacted by Congress, signed by the executive, and upheld most of the time by the judiciary. Those are the laws of our land. That is our duty to enforce those laws, whether that's a Title 8 immigration law, whether that's chasing a bank robber or a spy or whatever else. That is our duty, whether it's a state and local law enforcement agency, and they make choices also. Do they support federal law enforcement going after Mr. Jose Huerta Chuma, or do they not? We all make choices. Our Title 8 immigration mission continues. Next slide. Our Title 8 immigration mission continues unabated here in Minneapolis, despite yesterday's tragedy that was preventable by folks making better choices, politicians, journalists, and would-be anarchists and rioters. This individual from Laos was apprehended within the past 24 hours. This operation continues unabated. This is evidence of that. We will continue to make these streets a safer place. It is our duty, because we choose to be Border Patrol agents and ICE agents, to take individuals like that off the streets so we can make Minneapolis and America a safer place. Thank you.
By the way, was in federal immigration.
Hold on questions until the end. Mr. Marcos Charles will talk, and we'll take questions at the end. Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I know Commander Bovino spoke about yesterday's incidents in the situation. But I also want to draw your attention to the continued uptick in violence we're seeing against federal law enforcement officials, not just here, but across the country. Yesterday, here in Minneapolis, a crowd of violent agitators tackled an ICE special agent when one of our special response teams went to assist. A protester literally bit off part of that agent's finger. The officer received immediate medical attention on the scene and was transported to the emergency room for treatment. We do want to thank the people at the hospital for the assistance and the staff who treated our officer. The officer is recovering, but is now permanently maimed and has lost part of his finger. I don't think I have to tell you that this kind of violence is unacceptable, but I also don't think I need to tell you that this kind of violence is not a coincidence. When sanctuary politicians, activists, and the media work hard to create chaos and fear instead of using their platforms to reassure their communities, this is the result. The reality is, and this is what Commander Bovino and I have been talking about all week, we're out here to arrest dangerous criminal illegal aliens so they can't victimize innocent people in our communities anymore. Since the beginning of this operation, we've arrested over 3,400 illegal aliens, removing criminals, gang members, and terrorists out of Minnesota communities, detaining them in ICE custody for removal from the country. Those are criminals who won't reoffend in our communities. Those are criminals who won't be creating more victims that could be one of your family members or loved ones. Some of these criminals that we arrested yesterday are on the scene, well, these are our agitators from yesterday, if anybody wants to take a picture of these people or haven't seen them yet. The first picture was the individual who decided to bite off one of our agents' fingers. Some of the criminals we arrested yesterday: 40-year-old criminal illegal alien from Honduras convicted of assault. A 51-year-old criminal illegal alien from Laos convicted of assault also. A 45-year-old criminal illegal alien from the Ukraine convicted of first-degree robbery. And a 46-year-old criminal illegal alien from Laos who was convicted of facilitating child sex crime. ICE officers and agents are out there every day arresting the worst of the worst, so law-abiding citizens in this country and in Minnesota can sleep easy at night. This work isn't about headlines, it's about public safety. We can now take some questions.
Commander Rubino. He was previously in federal immigration custody in 2018 at a jail in Minnesota, and then was released under the Trump administration again in 2018. You talk about choice. That was also a choice to release this individual, the man that you were targeting, obviously, to detain him. So if he was released in 2018 from federal immigration custody, why would that be the case? Why was that choice made?
Yeah, I don't know the particular case in 2018 that you're talking about, but this individual that we, want to put that back up there, please? That individual is now an illegal alien. It's my mission to find this illegal alien before he harms another American citizen and does harm. That's what I'm after there. And yet we can go back and look and blame in history. Right now, my mission is to take this individual off the street. And the main point here being is this individual is in the process of being taken into custody. Agitators, rioters, and anarchists prevented us from taking this individual into custody because of a very, very chaotic scene. This individual should be in custody right now, not out on the streets preying on Americans. That is the story that is most poignant here.
Multiple videos.
They got a lot of questions for him.
From yesterday, and at no point is he seen brandishing.
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
We have seen multiple videos from the incident yesterday.
This is about Alex, guys. Listen to what the reporter says.
From different angles, and at no point do we see Alex Preddy brandishing a weapon. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said that he was brandishing a weapon, and in the video we see him on.
Which is what I just showed y'all earlier with Kristi Noem, basically saying that he was brandishing a weapon. I also let y'all hear what the other people said. Now they're asking this guy directly, was Alex Pretty brandishing a weapon? Because in none of the videos we didn't see him with a weapon. So basically, why do y'all keep saying that?
The ground with his hands on his head. We see an officer leaving what it appears to be with the weapon after he extracted it from Pretty's waist area. Did the officers see the weapon? Did they see him brandishing the weapon at him?
Sure. Many videos out there, many different accounts that you may see, that I may see, that anybody here may see. That, folks, is why we have something called an investigation, to take what you're talking about, to take those videos, to take witness statements, to take officer statements, all those minute details that will paint a true picture, not a freeze frame concept, and paint a larger picture of what really happened. That is why we investigate, so we can get to the truth, so there's not speculation. Speculation after 24 hours, you've got a lot of speculation in there. That officer, let's think of what those agents were doing on that scene, making a split-second decision. You had 24 hours to try and armchair quarterback things. That agent had a split second to make a decision.
That agent had a split second to make a decision. Way to moonwalk past the question that was asked, sir. You most definitely know whether or not if he brandished it. That's part of him saying, wait on the investigation so we can cover it up and not tell you.
That's not your agency, Commander.
It's not speculation.
Right here.
Commander, was Alex Pretty armed when he was shot?
Again, the investigation is going to...
the investigation. Come on, man. Answer the question. They asking you a direct question, man. Did he or did he not brandish a weapon? Why you keep saying wait on the investigation? Why? Why does he keep saying that when he knows good and well what exactly happened there, guys? I'm just saying, could it be a cover-up? That's why I asked in the poll, in the chat, was Alex Pretty's unalive and justified? Let me know by voting on the poll in the chat.
Cover all those facts, things like how many shots were fired, where were the weapons located. All those facts are going to come out in the investigation. I wasn't there wrestling that assaultive subject that was assaulting Border Patrol agents. I wasn't there wrestling him myself, so I'm not going to speculate. I'm going to wait for that investigation to come. No, don't interrupt me. I'm going to wait till that investigation comes out until I make a decision there.
If there's an investigation going on and you have not concluded, isn't it possible this was a bad shooting? Or have you already concluded for yourself that this was justified?
I've not concluded anything. I've not given you a conclusion. But what I do know is this individual was on that scene several minutes before that shooting, interfering with a lawful, legal, ethical law enforcement operation to arrest Jose Huerta Chuma. And again, it's back to choices. We just talked about choices. When someone makes the choice to come into an active law enforcement scene, interfere, obstruct, delay, or assault law enforcement officers, and they bring a weapon to do that, that is a choice that individual made.
No,
Commander Bovino, when it comes to the shooting, from what I understand, there were 2 agents who fired shots. We know one of the agents had 8 years experience, and we know he was a less lethal instructor and had this training. What did the other agent, what was his history, and are they both working right now, or are they on administrative leave?
All agents that were involved in that scene are working, not in Minneapolis, but in other locations. That's for their safety. There's this thing called doxing, and the safety of our employees is very important to us. So we're going to keep those employees safe. As far as the number of shots, the number of agents involved, that, again, is going to come out in the investigation. I'm not going to speculate on who did what, when they did it, how they did it. or what exactly occurred there.
You don't want to talk about it. Look at it.
That one of them did have 8 years experience, so we are talking about one of the agents. Why not talk about the other who shot as well?
Because before those facts come out, we need to ensure that we're talking truthfully and accurately. And before I speculate, I'm going to talk truthfully and accurately.
Listen to him moonwalk past the question, guys. He don't want to talk about it.
Between your agency, Border Patrol, and Mr. Charles, your agency, ICE, we've now seen 2 separate people shot and killed by your officers within 17 days. Do either of you plan on taking any accountability for those actions?
2 suspects, or you're correct, 2 suspects have been shot, and suspects that assault, delay, obstruct, or threaten a law enforcement officer's life. It goes back to the choices that we just talked about. When individuals make poor choices, poor decisions, come into a law enforcement situation, an active law enforcement situation, conspire to come into that situation, whether that's based on ideology, we don't know. That'll be in the investigation that we just talked about. That's what we base the split-second decisions on, and our law enforcement officers are safe. They managed to come home at the end of shift, and
shout out to you for that $2. He says, how many U.S. citizens have been deported by ICE? Let's go, my guy. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to you for that too.
Again, I would implore upon any individuals, whether they're anarchists, rioters, or anyone else that thinks it wise to go into a law enforcement scene to disrupt, to delay, is to don't do that. Think about.
He says zero.
Let's think about that in terms. Say a bank robbery is in progress, and the police are taking care of that, and then you decide to go in there and perhaps take action. That's not a good idea in any form or fashion. The same thing with Title 8. Same thing with Title 8 enforcement. We are after an individual with a very serious criminal record. We don't need any help. Thank you.
All right. Well, you heard what he had to say basically regarding this whole situation. You know, he said he's not going to give any comments until, basically, the investigation is done. That's what he said. But it's a lot of people out there that's saying the unaliving of Alex Pretty was shameful, guys. Check this out.
An epicenter of this moment will undoubtedly be the city and the people of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The people there were pushed to the brink over the weekend again in the wake of another killing of a nonviolent bystander by ICE agents in Minneapolis. This time it was 37-year-old Alex Pretty, an ICU nurse who cared for veterans. Donald Trump and his cabinet, his administration, are demanding once again that you not believe your eyes and ears. Fortunately, for the sake of our country and our democracy, Americans in large numbers today are choosing to reject Donald Trump's lies and his administration's lies, and reject a smear campaign by Donald Trump and his administration that is intended to somehow justify the unjustifiable, a state-sanctioned act of brutality on the streets of an American city. First, the facts, as we understand them, as we can see them with our own eyes. Video evidence from the scene shows that Pretty got between a woman who'd been pepper sprayed and a federal agent who was pepper spraying her. Pretty is then pepper sprayed himself. He continues to try to protect her, but he's tackled and restrained before ICE agents open fire on him.
Let's rewind it. What do y'all, hold on, what do y'all think?
And again, and again.
All right, so this is the video. So basically, he got in between official ICE business. They were pepper spraying the lady. He came in between them trying to get her away from getting pepper sprayed, and wound up being in an altercation with ICE himself, and to where he was unalived. Check it out.
Pretty got between a woman who'd been pepper sprayed and a federal agent who was pepper spraying her. Pretty is then pepper sprayed himself. He continues to try to protect her, but he's tackled and restrained.
Y'all see him?
Pretty is then pepper sprayed himself. He continues to try to protect her, but he's tackled and restrained before ICE agents open fire on him again and again and again and again.
Man, y'all.
Not a single shred of video evidence shows him drawing his gun, which he had a legal permit to carry legally.
Remember, they said he drew his gun. That's why the reporters were
A single
asking.
shred of video evidence shows him drawing his gun, which he had a legal permit to carry legally. Now, in the face of those facts that you just saw with your own eyes, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem called Preddy a, quote, domestic terrorist. She and the officials who work for an administration that pardoned violent and armed insurrectionists who assaulted police officers at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, they are now today, without any sense of irony or shame, claiming that by virtue of having a gun, Preddy had a gun, which he never brandished at any point in the interaction with ICE agents, that somehow...
Y'all know they just asked the chief if he brandished that weapon, and the chief did not want to answer that question. He said, man, wait for the investigation to be over, and then we'll get back to you with the answer. Well, we just looked. I didn't see him brandish a weapon. I wouldn't even know he had no weapon. I'm just saying.
ICE shooting him over and over again was justifiable.
This individual showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training and took action to defend the officer's life and those of the public.
Let's get Happy, right? Let's deport Happy. He told me to shut up. I wasn't there. Well, guess what? You're going to shut up because you're not going to be here. Congratulations, my guy. You just got deported. We'll holler at you.
Around him, and I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple.
I am sorry that this gentleman is dead, but he did bring a 9mm semi-automatic weapon with 2 cartridges to what was supposed to be a peaceful protest. I've been to a protest. Yeah. Guess what? I didn't bring a gun. I brought a billboard.
A, I actually don't believe that. But B, quote, I don't know of any protester who shows up with a gun. We know they have the names of hundreds of them because they pardoned them. All of this flies in the face of the facts as we can see them with our own eyes and the law as we understand it. Our colleague Carol Lenig is reporting this, quote, multiple seasoned law enforcement officers told MS Now that they have been unable to see the justification for the shooting. Here's Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara.
The police
chief spoke on it. This is an individual that was a city resident. It appears that he was present, exercising his First Amendment rights to record law enforcement activity, and also exercising his Second Amendment rights to lawfully be armed in a public space in the city. So I think very obviously there are serious questions that are being raised. I have seen different experts and people analyzing the video that have made statements about that. I cannot speculate, but I don't have any evidence that I've seen that suggests that the weapon was brandished.
In a statement, the parents of Alex Preddy say this, quote, we are heartbroken, but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man. Thank you. That plea from a grieving mom and dad to, quote, please get the truth out about our son is part of what is fueling a fact-finding mission and, frankly, a backlash. It's taking many shapes and forms right now. On the legal front, the state of Minnesota has gone to court to seek an order ending ICE's deployment in the city of Minneapolis, a judge sharply questioning lawyers for the Justice Department. She asked whether a letter from Attorney General Pam Bondi demanding an end to sanctuary policies and for the state to hand over the voter rolls in exchange for an end to ICE operations was a form of coercion. A ruling on that could come down at any point. The pushback to the Trump administration intent on spreading lies and disinformation in the wake of another deadly shooting by ICE agents is where we begin today with senior contributing editor and Minneapolis native Michelle Norris, and our reporter Alex Tabbitt is back on the ground for us in Minneapolis. Alex, I feel like the roller coaster and the whiplash that you and I and our viewers have been on from when we were together.
He's at the memorial for Mr. Petty,
on Friday,
guys.
for that incredible protest.
Sad,
and
man,
this
sad.
news Saturday. Just before you get into your reporting today, take me back to the moment when you found out about the shooting.
Just like how our team found out about the shooting of Renee Good 17 days prior to the shooting and killing of Alex Preddy, we found out via an ICE observer, somebody who's dedicated their lives, their free time to hold these officers accountable. So we rushed to the scene, but we weren't the only ones who rushed to the scene, Nicole. Thousands of members of this community found out that yet another person was shot and killed by a federal officer here in Minneapolis. And instead of staying home and learning about what was going on their television or scrolling on their phones and anxiously, they got into their cars and they came towards the danger to hold these federal officers accountable.
Thank you, Money
and to
Mo.
be there for their community. One man named Greg Ketter, 70 years old, said he couldn't stay home. And I want you to watch his moment of catharsis.
You! Stop! Look out!
You hear the gunshots. Thank you, Mo.
Okay. I'm fine. I didn't breathe anything. I'm just angry. I'm 70 years old. Angry.
We just caught up with Greg and we asked him to contextualize this moment that his city, that his community is going through in the grander context of his life. I want you to hear what he had to say.
Well, it's a shameful period in American history.
That's that man. That's the same old guy right there.
After Renee Good was killed, person must have been about my age, and he was in tears too, and he just said, "I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of all of this. This is not my America," and that's the way I feel. It's just not what we're about. Having our own police or whatever you want to call them come after us, or come after Americans. It's just not right. And come after immigrants. The immigrants are an integral part of our community.
You've got the federal government with a presence that just so greatly outsizes what the state and the city is able to defend its population from. Under those circumstances, where do you find this hope?
There are a lot more of us than there are of them. I mean, if they're going to start killing people randomly, then it's going to cause a lot of fear and panic, but a lot of people are going to step up. I just know they will. I mean, there's always the adage that, the right has the guns and the left has snowballs or whatever it's going to be, but I don't want to see a civil war. It's not going to be like the Civil War in the 1800s because it's our neighbors, it's our friends. We disagree, and we should be able to disagree, but we should be able to disagree with I don't know, with some respect for each other, and there's just none of that left. Nobody seems to respect their neighbors anymore.
And Nicole, it wasn't just in the moments after the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy that people rushed to the scene. It's been every moment since then. We've been here at the crack of dawn. We've been here at midnight. We've been here in sub-zero temperatures that can induce frostbite. And every time we come here, you will see what you can see right behind me right now, which is a community mourning just like they did 3 weeks ago for Renee Good, just like they did last week after a 5-year-old boy was detained by federal agents and sent to Texas. A community in almost perpetual mourning right now. Nicole.
It's crazy, y'all. All right. So, like I said, some people call that whole situation shameful, guys. You know, how y'all feeling? Make sure you're voting on the poll within the chat, guys. All right. So, here is a little bit about what Trump and them plan to do now. It says that they are shifting their strategy in Minneapolis. Let's see what they shifting it to.
Shooting on Saturday by a federal border patrol officer in Minneapolis. The Department of Homeland Security confirming exclusively to NBC News that there is body camera footage of the deadly shooting of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse for the VA who was shot and killed by federal authorities during a skirmish amid the protest. DHS officials say there are multiple angles of the killing captured on those body cameras and that they're currently under review. Video captured by bystanders, which you're seeing here in slow motion, appears to show that confrontation.
Oh my God,
y'all! Of a firearm, we now know he was legally permitted to carry and then shot him, claiming he was a threat. Amid mounting blowback over the incident and ICE's tactics in Minnesota, new signs from the Trump administration that it may be looking for an off-ramp to de-escalate the tensions. First, President Trump telling the Wall Street Journal that his administration is, quote, reviewing everything about the shooting and announcing on social media that there would be a shakeup in leadership on the ground, with Border Czar Tom Homan now managing ICE operations there.
Like I said, they took the other guy out that just gave the speech, and now they bringing in Tom Homan.
White House today, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt signaling that the president himself was distancing himself from allegations made by his top deputies about Preddy.
Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
This has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
Leavitt's comments coming, as I mentioned, after top administration officials first responded to the shooting with unsubstantiated accusations that Preddy was plotting to kill federal immigration officials.
When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
On Meet the Press yesterday, Minnesota's Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar accused the Trump administration of trying to gaslight the American people about what happened.
When I hear the officials from the Trump administration describe this video in ways that simply aren't true, I just keep thinking, your eyes don't lie. You know, the American people aren't sitting at a Trump cabinet meeting having to say everything to make him happy. They're going to make their own judgments. ICE needs to leave our state. They are making us less safe, not more safe.
Some Republicans now joining calls for a transparent investigation into what happened. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy tweeting the events in Minneapolis are incredibly disturbing. The credibility of ICE and DHS are at stake. President Trump, meanwhile, announcing today that he'd spoken with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz in what he described as a very good call. In a statement, Governor Walz called the conversation productive. We are covering this from all angles. NBC's Morgan Chesky will join us shortly from Minneapolis. NBC's Monica Alba is outside the White House. Also with us, NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter.
All right, let's pause there right there. Okay, now they told y'all that Tom Homan was coming in. Let's see what his role in all of this would be.
Defending its operations in Minneapolis, here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt this afternoon.
As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez is following this from our Washington bureau. Nancy, the White House announced it is sending the administration border czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis. What is he being tasked with?
And Lindsay, White House officials insist that this is not an indication that the president has lost any faith with the leaders who are on the ground right now.
Can we get 30 more likes, guys? Double tap that screen. If you have not, that's how you hit the like button. Or you can click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. We need 30 more likes, guys, to hit 300 on that like button. Please double tap your screen or click those three dots, hit the thumbs up as we find out what Tom Homan's job will be once he reaches Minnesota.
Notably Gregory Bovino, who is the head of Border Patrol. They simply say that this is Tom Homan's area of expertise and that he needs to be there to help relieve the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who runs all of DHS and is also dealing with a major snowstorm. Take a listen to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, how she described it a few minutes ago.
Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country.
Leavitt added that Homan is due to get on a plane and start heading to Minneapolis in a few hours, Lindsay.
So Lana mentioned the conversation that the president had with Minnesota's governor, Tim Walz. What more do we know about their conversation?
Well, both President Trump and the governor said afterwards that it was a productive conversation. The president even said that they were on the same page. Very rare for President Trump to compliment Tim Walz in any way. He usually has a string of negative comments about him. In this case, it does sound like it was a good conversation, but doesn't mean that everything is smooth sailing. Afterwards, Governor Walz said that while the conversation was productive, he did tell the president that his staff doesn't have his facts straight about the situation on the ground in Minnesota and that they need impartial investigations and they need to reduce the number of federal agents in Minnesota. And then White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, for her part, said that Walz and the mayor of Minneapolis are largely to blame for stirring up anger, stirring up protests in the city of Minneapolis. And she basically laid the death of Alex Preddy this weekend at their door. So still a lot of tension between leaders in Minnesota and leaders at the White House at this.
So Tom gonna be coming in because they say this is his area of expertise, guys. And they're basically playing the blame game. The leaders of Minnesota are blaming Trump and them, and Trump and them are blaming the leaders, guys. All right, so ICE is due to leave from Minnesota. Here goes some on that.
Agents were involved in the shooting death versus days after that deadly shooting in Minneapolis. And let's start with that breaking news. Multiple sources telling NBC News tonight that the Trump administration is planning to cut back on the number of Border Patrol agents in that city sometime this week. And the man who's been leading the immigration crackdown there is expected to leave tomorrow, too. This is after the president and the Minnesota governor, Tim Walz, today talked on the phone. The president said, as you can see here, that the two seem to be on a similar wavelength. For his part, Governor Walz says the president talked about reducing the number of agents in his state. And the president sending somebody new, border czar Tom Homan, to Minnesota. Now, this is interesting because Homan has been kind of sidelined from what's happening there after what we have seen develop in the last couple of weeks. This is clearly changing after Saturday's deadly shooting, where the eyewitness videos we've seen so far contradict some of what federal officials initially said happened, when at least one officer shot and killed Alex Preddy.
Shout out to everybody that contributed to that gift goal. I most definitely appreciate y'all. Thank y'all.
Top Trump administration officials at first using phrases like would-be assassin, suggesting Preddy planned to massacre agents, that he brandished a gun. But look at the multiple videos now coming in from eyewitnesses from different angles, showing Preddy was not holding a weapon during the incident that started with him coming to help a woman being pushed to the ground. That's an angle of those early moments of the interaction slowed down there. The videos also appear to show that a federal agent took what looks to be a gun from Preddy's back holster before he was shot. At one point, you're going to see Preddy's hands circled in the video. No, it doesn't appear there's a gun in those hands. We've got team coverage tonight. We're going to get to Tom Winter for sort of a walkthrough of these videos, how it fits into the investigation. But I want to start with Monica Alba, who is live for us at the White House, because, Mon, there's some new information now that we're just getting in from our team, from our colleagues Gabe Gutierrez, Julia Ainsley, that appears to be a pullback by the federal government of the current position on the ground in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I think you are starting to see several things that are pushing to a total shift in strategy and approach here, Hallie. And that top line that you just mentioned from our colleagues is a significant one, because the commander of CBP, Greg Bovino, somebody who was dispatched to Minneapolis to be very involved in the day-to-day operations, we are learning is expected to depart tomorrow. And that is coming as we know that the border czar, Tom Homan, has been sent by the president to now go oversee the day-to-day operations there on the ground. And that seems to be a direct result
already, King
of this
Caesar.
move.
Thank you for showing up.
According to our colleagues, that what could follow here is a reduction in agents from that agency, from Customs and Border Patrol. And the reason that that is also important, and we should remind people, is that some of those agents were involved in the shooting death of Alex Preddy on Saturday. Those kinds of agents from that agency, I should say, and not necessarily those specific agents that we know have actually already been relocated for now, it seems, out of the state. But what's important to point out about that is if they do end up reducing many of those federal agents, that also seems to be, Hallie, a direct byproduct of a conversation that President Trump had today with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
I see somebody saying he clearly took the weapon. But remember, they said that the border, the ICE agent took the weapon before they started to fire up on him, which means he was unarmed when he was getting shot. So he never brandished the weapon. When he got on the ground, they must have seen it. They took the weapon from his holster and began to unload on him. So it doesn't matter if they took the weapon or even if he had one. He never posed them a threat. He never pointed it at anyone. They took it off his person and began to fire up on him. We just seen it.
This is something that he had been calling for, local officials had been calling for, and that now it seems the White House and the president were open to this idea of, again, reducing the footprint of some of these additional agents that were surged to the area. And I think the messaging just can't be overstated here of what it is signaling if you have somebody like Greg Bovino now leaving, who really made some of the more controversial and at times inflammatory comments over the weekend, claiming things without providing any kind of evidence about Alex Preddy and his motive or what he was thinking in the lead up to that incident in which he was shot and killed. Hallie.
And Monica, this breaking news happening late today in just the last few minutes doesn't come in a vacuum here. There had been clearly some indication that those around the president, or at least some inside the Republican Party, were frustrated with the initial response. We're not happy with the initial response from DHS after the shooting of Alex Preddy. We know Democrats were largely livid, as what they saw, as they described, Senator Amy Klobuchar, for example, describing it as almost gaslighting from the administration. But you look at somebody like Republican Senator Ted Cruz, for example, somebody who is a fairly reliable loyalist of President Trump's, of the White House, saying this on his podcast. Listen to this.
What I think the administration could do better is the tone with which they're describing this. That immediately when an incident like this happens, they come out guns blazing, that we took out a violent terrorist, hooray. Escalating the rhetoric doesn't help, and it actually loses credibility. And so I would encourage the administration to be more measured.
And now it seems like we're seeing the White House distance the president from Secretary Noem, who came out initially after the shooting and said that Preddy was brandishing a gun. Again, the video contradicts that. From Stephen Miller as well.
That really stood out to me today, Hallie, in the briefing where Caroline Leavitt, who says she speaks for the president,
basically said they could not endorse those comments. They didn't really want to weigh in on whether they were appropriate or not. But at one point, Caroline Leavitt did say that the president did not believe that Alex Preddy was a domestic terrorist or that he was seeking to, quote, massacre law enforcement. And you mentioned Senator Ted Cruz. We played that sound there. And Senator John Curtis of Utah, also a Republican, saying tonight he disagrees with Secretary Noem's premature DHS response before all the facts were known and weakened confidence. That is something you are starting to see come out a little bit more from Republican allies, but certainly at the White House, that was a notable shift in tone today as well, Hallie.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news.
All right, it's crazy how we can watch the same video and see different things. I most definitely just seen them take his weapon. He never pulled it out. They took it and they explained it why it was happening. And y'all still are saying, no, he pointed it. When? When did he point it? I never seen him point it at nobody. He was on the ground. They took it out the holster. You know what I'm saying? They took it off of him and then popped him. Come on, man. We got to stop just trying to bend stuff, because that's how we want it to be. Come on, y'all. Now, I know I ain't blind and I ain't crazy, and I know some of y'all ain't blind or crazy either, man. Y'all stop the cap, man. Stop the nonsense.
NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley and NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. Let's start at the White House. Monica, what are they saying today about the shooting in Minneapolis? Does it seem like they're walking back any of their rhetoric from over the weekend?
Well, there is a notable shift in tone and in some of the responses here, Ryan, just 48 hours since that fatal shooting on Saturday. In those initial moments, those responses from DHS in particular and from other top officials are now being completely distanced by the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, to say that between the president and herself, they could not necessarily back or endorse some of those initial assessments of Alex Preddy. Certainly those comments from White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, labeling him a domestic terrorist, the things that Secretary Noem said about him as well. The White House today saying that there needs to be a complete investigation before conclusions like that could ever be drawn. I thought it was really specific and very notable today in that briefing that you did have Caroline Leavitt, again, essentially saying that she couldn't endorse, and she did essentially say that things had been uttered by the CBP commander, Greg Bovino, by the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, by others, were essentially not things that the president agreed with, that he didn't view that and that he didn't see Alex Preddy in the same way. Now, remember, it was the president about a week ago who did concede that he believes that ICE is going to make some mistakes sometimes, that that's something that can happen. Remember, he was asked about that in the wake of the shooting of Renee Nicole Good. But what is obviously notable about that is that, again, the president telling the Wall Street Journal he wants to see everything here reviewed before he can make any determination. And given those shifts, sending Tom Homan now to be the one to oversee ICE operations on the ground in Minneapolis and having a productive phone call with Governor Walz, who he was massively criticizing all weekend long, tells you that there is a shift in strategy here from the administration that we need to be paying attention to.
And part of that shift, Monica, appears to be a conversation that happened with the president and Governor Walz. When you take that in the context of the fact that President Trump has just been hammering Governor Walz has returned fire throughout this entire process. What does it say that the two were able to have what appears to be somewhat of an amicable phone call?
Yeah, they called it a good conversation. They both said it was productive. Governor Walz, in his readout, essentially said that the president was open to reducing the number of federal agents on the ground. The White House confirming that, saying that if certain criteria are met, that is a possibility, that there could be a reduction of the record number of federal agents that were sent to Minneapolis in recent weeks. But it really, the fact they're having a conversation at all, Ryan, is very notable. These are two people who have been extremely critical. It has been an extremely acrimonious relationship. But today they are saying that they're going to continue working together, that there could be future conversations on the horizon, and pledging, I think, really from both of their parts to try to de-escalate here in a clear, it seems, search for some kind of off-ramp after what we saw happen this weekend.
And we talked about the fact that the president said that he's going to send the border czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis. Does this tell us anything about DHS Secretary Noem's standing within the administration?
Well, according to the White House, she still has the full trust and confidence of the president, but it certainly does raise some questions about how they view the overall leadership structure when it comes to massive immigration policy and how these real decisions are being made. Tom Homan is not somebody who has been involved in the day-to-day decision-making or operations. Specifically when it comes to Minneapolis, he's been key in some other aspects of creating and executing on immigration policy. So the fact that he's going to go there, and certainly the press secretary was asked today whether this means that Greg Bovino will be departing. She said it will clearly be Tom Homan who is the point of contact on the ground there as we work to figure out whether Bovino will be out. Though Noam, for now, still seems to be in her capacity in her job.
Okay, Monica, thank you for that. Let's turn now to Tom Winter as we look closer at this video, Tom, and we should warn our viewers, it is pretty disturbing to watch. But the DHS Secretary Noam claimed that the individual approached border control with an automatic handgun. But when you actually look at this video, walk us through this. How does what we're actually seeing compare to what the Secretary said?
Right, Ryan, and I think she mentioned it was a semi-automatic handgun, and I know shortly we're going to be able to show you some of that video from the scene and some of the video that bystanders took. There's 4 specific videos and 4 specific angles that show the interaction, and it does not seem to indicate that at any point in time Preddy's gun was out. This is one of the videos that establishes kind of how this whole thing starts. And
I want to tell y'all this. Seeing that he ran up there, you know, and basically got in the middle of the woman getting pepper sprayed, and he had the weapon on him, let's keep it 100. If he wanted to pop an ICE agent, he could have did it then. He could have did it when they first started pepper spraying him. He could have did it when he first ran up. He didn't have to wait till they had him on the ground, till they was all over the top of him, hitting him and all of that. If he really wanted to do it, he could have did it when he first ran up there. Let's keep it 100. He could have did it when he first ran up there. He could have took it out the holster and just started popping. You know, if he was looking to hurt somebody. That's my opinion. I'm just saying.
See there, his left hand is in the air. There appears to be nothing in that hand. And then in his right hand, we're going to look at it again, appears to be his cell phone, which he later puts back in his pocket.
Yeah, that's his cell phone.
Not near where it appears that his gun was taken from by CBP officers at the scene. So this video shows the moment leading up to it. There's a
right there, or even right here, after the ICE agent pushed him and then started pepper spraying him. If he wanted to pop something, he could have got the popping right then. I'm just saying.
Videoing who's pushed to the ground. Look, these are very volatile situations. We have the advantage now of looking at these videos. You're looking at the
now they have him on the ground.
Point that I was referencing when the gun is taken out from his back waistband.
They took the strap from his back waistband. When they take it, he becomes unarmed. They still haven't fired not one shot yet as they take the weapon from behind his back.
And then after this, the shots, somebody yells out gun, and then the shots are fired.
Now, somebody yells out gun. They take the gun and then start shooting.
Including the fatal shots that hit Preddy. This is a very volatile situation.
That's exactly what they did.
With the advantage of slow motion, with the advantage of pausing things. You can't pause things in real life. And the burden legally will come back to whether or not the person who fired the shots, the CBP officer initially fired.
You're talking about it's called premeditated. He never pulled it out. What do you mean premeditated? He never took it out. They took it from him. He didn't reach for it. They had his hands. As you can clearly see right here, they had his hands were in the front. They were in the back. They took the strap out. If it was premeditated, he would have started popping when he first ran. What's wrong with y'all, man? What's wrong with y'all? Wow. No, premeditated. Okay, well, I give you that. He brought the gun, and so did Kyle Rittenhouse. He had it for protection. People walk around with straps every day in Texas where I'm at. They go into the grocery store with it. They walk into a convenience store with it. You know what I'm saying? They drive around in their cars with it. And don't be thinking about hurting nobody unless somebody trying to hurt them. You know, come on, man. What are we doing? And he was licensed to have it. So it was nothing premeditated. He had a license to have it. He can have it. They said it's his right. He didn't point it at anybody. He didn't pull it on anybody. They pulled it out his back where he had it at, and then began to fire on him. Come on, y'all. Y'all got to stop this nonsense.
The shots, whether or not they thought that they had reasonable threat to their life. But certainly this individual appears to be unarmed at the moment that happens. That's what the video shows. And there were a number of things that were stated about the motive and the background of this individual that, frankly, people in law enforcement and even people, former people who used to work for DHS have raised is serious credibility and transparency concerns as far as the things that were said by this administration over the weekend.
And even though the White House does appear to be walking this back a bit, we've heard multiple administration officials repeatedly label Alex Preddy as a domestic terrorist. Is there anything to back up that claim? What kind of evidence would you need to prove something like that?
Well, what they typically say is that if somebody uses violence or coercion to push forward their ideology, that's the definition of a domestic terrorist. And that's true. What we haven't seen here is any evidence, at least any evidence that we can publicly find. And of course, these videos that we've been looking at show just a specific moment in time that we have not yet seen any body-worn camera video that our colleague Julia Ainsley reports does exist. And so we don't have any sort of statements that may have been made by Preddy or not, any sort of statements that were made by the CBP officers or not. And so we don't have anything here that goes to motive for him even being there and what, if anything, he said. And so it's very difficult to get to the point of ideology if you don't know somebody's ideology going into an operation like this. And so I think that's the reason why people have picked out the domestic terrorist line and said, how do you, on one hand, you're not saying you quite know the sequence of events and you're reviewing the footage. On the other hand, you're saying the motivations and the background of this individual who apparently has interactions with law enforcement in the form of 4 traffic tickets. So it's a bit incongruous, and that's something I think a lot of people are looking at.
All right, Tom, you mentioned Julia's great reporting. Let's bring Julia in now to talk about it. Julia, you're reporting that there actually is body camera footage, which is not always a guarantee when it comes to these interactions between ICE and CBP and folks on the ground. What kind of information could that potentially provide?
Well, and obviously if I had that, I'd be sharing it with you, but we understand this just got handed over to investigators and they're combing through it now because they'll be able to see the different angles and what exactly it was that the agents saw when they decided to fire those shots. Now, a body-worn camera goes right in the center of the chest of the gear that the agent would be wearing, and it's rolling really from the time they start engaging. So it would have been rolling when they started that arrest that they were trying to do on a target right near the place of the shooting. That's when the women that Preddy was with started blowing their whistles, and that's when Preddy got involved. So they would have already had their cameras rolling before that arrest even began, and it's from different angles. And so we'll be able to see, hopefully, or investigators will be able to see at least, that when they removed the gun from Preddy and whether or not it aligns with those first public statements on Saturday when they said that Preddy was violently resisting being disarmed. And so as it looks like from some of the videos I reviewed and Tom's reviewed, that the gun was actually taken away before the shots were fired, that will all come to light and be part of this investigation. And then that could be enough evidence to then refer this to the Justice Department for a criminal investigation into whether or not the agents criminally violated Preddy's civil rights.
So let's talk about what's happening now on the ground. The president announcing that the borders are Tom Homan's going to Minneapolis. What do you make of this decision? Is he someone who could potentially de-escalate the situation there?
Potentially. I mean, Tom Homan for a long time has really had it out for sanctuary cities. He makes, no attempt to cover that up. He thinks all cities should be cooperating with ICE. And of course, that's the situation we're walking into in Minneapolis, where they are not cooperating with ICE and handing over immigrants that they may encounter to the federal law enforcement. But I will also say this has implications nationwide, because who Homan is replacing as point person there is Greg Bovino, who's been head of all the Border Patrol operations since Los Angeles this summer. If you think about all the times you've seen tear gas thrown into crowds, if you think about big surges in cities like Charlotte, New Orleans, Chicago, Los Angeles, that was all led by Greg Bovino. So Homan being there signifies the White House realizes there was some kind of line crossed in this incident, or perhaps by the responses that they got from Secretary Norman Bovino over the weekend that were very quick to side with law enforcement after this incident before an investigation had been conducted. And somewhere inside the White House and the president himself, they've now made the decision that they would rather have someone like Tom Homan there, who is much more concerned about getting who he calls, the criminals, the worst of the worst on the streets, in that position, and taking out someone like Bovino, who wants to do wide sweeps and often really profile people. And that's been something that they've talked about ever since the Supreme Court ruling determined that they could do that, even without specific targeted names of people they're going after. So it's a huge switch, really, for the White House, and a signal that maybe they think the strategy and the path they were on isn't working.
Okay, we'll see if there'll be any sort of change, of course. Julia, we appreciate that. Let's go now to Misty to talk about this from a legal perspective. So, Misty, there were two court hearings today related to the situation in Minneapolis. The first one on the state's efforts to declare the administration's deployment of federal agents as unlawful. What stood out to you in that hearing today?
So this is interesting because the federal government's argument, the DOJ said that this is a federal law enforcement operation and therefore it falls under executive authority to execute it as they see fit. Now, Minnesota's argument is that it is not a valid law enforcement action. It's actually something being taken to coerce Minnesota into agreeing with or implementing federal government and the administration's policies. So that's the crux of the argument. What I found interesting, the judge came out the gate and said, I'm not here to make a decision on the merits of any immigration law enforcement operation, but did challenge the federal government on 2 points that squarely fit into Minnesota's argument. The first being skepticism about whether or not the amount of ICE officers being deployed, use of border security, is necessary to deal with issues with enforcing this law enforcement action. The second, and very, very interestingly, is a letter that Pam Bondi sent to Tim Walz over the weekend, which asks for the state to repeal sanctuary city policies, talks about turning over voter rolls and registrations, records regarding Medicaid that would be central to a fraud investigation. The judge saying, is the DOJ trying to circumvent what would be court-related procedures by pressuring
That's exactly
Minnesota
what they doing
with this law enforcement operation? So she did not roll from the bench today. We'll have to wait and see what that decision is. She did say it will be coming imminently. She understands that if there's a front burner, this is on the front of that front burner as far as necessity to get clarity on this.
They trying to use ICE as a bargaining tool. Wow.
And then we have a second case where state officials are trying to prevent federal officials from destroying evidence in this shooting. What did the judge say about that?
So that hearing just ended, and the judge did not make a decision from the bench, but what Minnesota is asking is for preservation of evidence. The administration, Department of Justice, saying they're preserving evidence as they would in any other case. But the idea is Minnesota is raising what they say are anomalies, things that are not in accordance with typical policies and procedures in this investigation. They're not a part of the investigation on the state side, and therefore it's critical that they at some point have cooperation with the federal government and also have the ability to access that investigative material down the road. So we're still waiting on that decision as well.
Okay, Misty Maris, thank you for that. We appreciate it.
We thank you for watching and
Oops. Hold up. Did not mean to go there. All right, hold up. Because I want to go. I want to go there. There we go. All right, y'all. So I showed y'all everything that I saw, regarding this situation. Let's end the poll real quick. Let's see what y'all said. All right, so we had out of 3.8K votes, guys. I asked, was Alex Pretty unalived and justified? 69% of y'all said no, and 31% of y'all said yes. So majority wins, guys. My chat most definitely felt like, and people who view this channel felt like, ICE didn't have to do what they did, guys. But they did it anyway. We heard this man called a terror with the is at the end. And I don't think that he was one of those at all, man. They said he was a nurse, man. And when we watched the video, we seen him intervene, when ICE was pepper spraying a lady trying to help her, basically get out of the way of the pepper spray. Wound up getting pepper sprayed himself. Then got pushed by an ICE agent. Then got tackled by a couple more. Once they got him down on the ground, they took his strap that he had on him, his weapon, out of his back, back his pants. They took it out. And once they took his weapon and realized, that he had a weapon, then one of the agents opened fire on this man while he was on the ground, and basically unalived him. They hit him up a bunch of times. I think they said it was 2 agents that fired up on this man and basically caused him to lose his life. We heard a lot of things about choices, and I can agree, when it comes to choices, everybody makes their own. Sometimes you make good choices. Sometimes you make bad choices, but the choice is yours to make. The choice that he took, basically, the ICE, basically took him out the game, man. I most definitely didn't see any reason for them to pop him, seeing that they unarmed him. That's just my perspective. Some of y'all out there may feel different. I'm not going to argue with you about it. It's cool. Everybody, is entitled to their own opinion. It just amazes me how we watched the same video in the same slow-mo and heard the commentary of what was going on. And so many of y'all saw different than what was being put right in front of your eyes. It's crazy how the human brain works, ain't it? It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy. I most definitely told y'all about Christy Nome, basically coming up under fire, basically of her for giving her account of what she was told about what happened on this situation. Trump spoke on this situation. So did Caroline Levitt. We heard from the border dude, that got removed from Minnesota so they can bring Tom Homan in. They took that guy right up out of there. He basically talked to us about choices, and the choices we make, and how it could come with consequences, right? So I basically covered everything that was in my title, man. I hope y'all enjoyed the show, man. Subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed, subscribe right now. Double tap that screen. If you haven't double tapped the screen to hit the like button, do it right now. Or click the 3 dots in the right-hand corner. Hit that thumbs up. It most definitely helps out the channel, guys. I don't know. I told y'all this ICE situation was going to be a bad deal from the start. Soon as they announced it, I said, man, this don't sound like it's going to go smooth. And it's not. So I was exactly right. It's not going smooth. I'm not against ICE getting the violent criminals up out of here. So don't ever for a second think that I'm just against ICE. No, I'm not. I feel like if it's some violent, illegal, immigrants in America, yeah, remove them, get them up out of here. Get them up out of here fast. But when it comes to U.S. citizens and maybe immigrants who are here legally, coming into conflict and being detained by ICE, I don't know about that, and I can almost have sympathy for some of the immigrants that may have came here illegally that have been law-abiding American citizens, basically law-abiding people since they've been here working, paying taxes, this, that, and the third, and being targeted by ICE as well and being shipped off. I said this before. Remember how America was built, man. You know what I'm saying? Like when we back way a long time ago, they welcome immigrants in with open arms. You know what I'm saying? Go read your history books. Go read your history books, and you will see that long time ago, America welcomed immigrants in with open arms. They wasn't doing no tripping about people coming here seeking refuge from poverty of their country and violence of their country, this, that, and the third. And if you don't believe me, you think I'm telling you a bunch of crap, Just go read your history books. Go and do your own research, you know. We most definitely allowed immigrants to come to America. I'm just saying. No, I ain't say criminals. But I didn't say criminals. We didn't know if they was criminals or not. Let's be honest here. Who is this? Graded 23. You talking about criminals? Question mark. We didn't know if they was criminals or not. They didn't know if they was criminals or not way back then when they was allowing them in. They didn't know. You know, before Biden. I'm talking about a long time ago. I'm talking about in the beginning of America. Yeah, I'm not saying, you know, that it's right for them to come as criminals. No, get the criminals up out of here. I agree. I'm just saying a long time ago, you know, they most definitely did not know whether if these people were criminals or not. They was just letting them into the U.S. And if you don't believe me, go do your research. But anyway, like I said, I'm not here to argue with anyone. You know, that's just how I feel. You know what I'm saying? That's just my thoughts. This is definitely why the Second Amendment is so important. It protects us from government outreach and threats of potential federal standing army. Okay, I bet. Well, it is now 2026. I understand that. So let me ask you this, graded 23. How do you feel about the non-violent criminals? The non-violent ones that are being targeted. What do you think about the U.S. citizens that be getting pulled over by ICE and asked to show their paperwork, you know, and they have been here legally forever, and some of them was born and bred here and not illegal 1%. What do you feel about that? Just asking. But anyway, y'all, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to my old subscribers as well as my new subscribers. We on the road to 60K. We need all the subscribers we can get. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe, man. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to all of my members, the old ones as well as the new ones. You know what I'm saying? Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel as well, man. Grab a membership. They're most definitely available. If you like this brand of entertainment, all you have to do is go to your home screen, click on my channel. It's gonna be a button there that says join, man, and you can most definitely get you a membership there. You know, shout out to my moderators, all of them. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate each and every one of y'all, because without y'all, you know, this would be impossible, man. Thank y'all for keeping my chat rolling smooth. And like I said before, I covered everything in my title, so therefore, that's my cue to exit. I hope y'all enjoyed the show. Y'all stay safe and stay warm. I know a lot of us are cold. You know, it's a winter storm out there. I think Jack Frost has moved in, you know, as our next door neighbors to a lot of people, man. So make sure y'all stay warm out there. Bundle up, you know, and I'll see y'all on the next one, man. And with that being said, Sidewalk Gang, checking out. Y'all be safe, man. Prayers for this man right here, man, that his soul goes everywhere. I mean, goes to where it needs to go. Prayers for his family and children, if he had any. It's most definitely a sad situation, man. I'll catch y'all. And with that being said, I'm gone, man. Y'all have a great rest of y'all night.